Num num. Num num. Birdie num num.
When I have understanding of computers, I shall be the supreme being. God isn't interested in technology. He knows nothing of the potential of the microchip or the silicon revolution. Look how he spends his time. 43 species of parrots. Nipples for men.
Don't do that, Jesus Christ! You're gonna get me killed! Out of here!
Oh, Billy.
Welcome, everybody, to AB Live. Yes, men still have nipples and birdie num-nums under sheep. Very excited today because we are going, well, first let me introduce myself. My name is Miguel Conner. I am your pompatus of Gnosis. And heresy shouldn't be this much fun. It just is. It just is. And we are going to have a lot of fun today because we are going to be covering one of a movie that I've seen so many times has really affected me. Obviously, I love all of Stanley Kubrick's content. He's one of the greatest, perhaps the greatest director of all times. And my God, an individual so full of occult and esoteric messages. And as I've said before, Dr. Strangelove is suddenly very relevant today as we are closer than ever to the brink of some sort of nuclear interaction between power players of this world. Hell is closed and all the devils are here, as Shakespeare said. But we want to do something about it, and the way is inside, and the way is to unveil all the secrets and realities behind what's going on today. So with us, we have the pleasure of being joined by David Block. David, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you, Miguel.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background before we get started on a spanning presentation on The Shining.
Yes. I was waking up 18, 19 years ago through EFK. Quite common, I think. I understood quite soon that I had to transform myself in order to cope with the darkness I was confronted with. So I started to study esoteric matters to find something to hold on to or believe in. And I find myself through alchemy in the beginning, and then I started to study Kabbalah, a left-hand path. So I am a practicing esoteric person today. So I'm not talking about, I'm talking about people who misuse our knowledge to do wicked things or bad things with it, because you can do good things and you can do bad things with it. And I think Kubrick tried to say that what he tried to say with his movies. Even in Space Odyssey 2001, you have this double side of the esoteric knowledge. You can transform, or you can perish with it, or go under with it, or yeah. So I am an esoteric person. So I'm not beating down on any practitioner. I am saying that some use our knowledge for bad things, and I think that's exactly what Stanley Kubrick tried to say with his movies.
Everything casts a shadow, as they say. Everything can be weaponized. And yeah, that's been the debate. Was Kubrick part of the deep state or the cabal, whatever you want to call it, or was he actually trying to give out? And we can go, yeah, that's like, that could be a whole other show. But this show is on The Shining. David will be giving a presentation. We will likely have to break it into part 1 or part 2 because he leaves no stone unturned, and this is going to be the most exhaustive exploration on The Shining you are ever going to have. But first, we've also got the Moondog Vance. Vance, how are you doing? You got some red rum with you?
Oh, yeah. I got a whole bottle of it over here. I think it's red. Yeah, it sounds good. Yeah, Shining is one of our family favorites, too. My son in particular loves it, so.
Awesome.
We'll see. Maybe he likes the little girls, you know. They're cute for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, well, good. I think your son will get a lot out of this. So awesome. And for the audience there, I see you already going into the chats. I don't know if we will actually have time to field any questions. If you do a super chat, we'll have to, but keep in mind we might not be able to get into those questions because again, David is going to take us on an incredible journey through the film The Shining. So, other than that, not much housekeeping.
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead. What were you saying?
Yeah, I think this is the most most extensive analysis of the movie so far, and I will present a lot of new material for you. I promise you that. Just let me pick up some pace. Part 1 will be an introduction, and I promise you to go into the detail in part 2 and 3. So bear with me.
Yes, we'll get there. It's not uncommon. I've watched podcasts where you have to break the show up but yeah, this is thorough, not even close. And I've watched documentaries, I've read books. This is the one, you truth seekers down here at the virtual Alexandria. So, shall we get started, David?
Yeah.
All right. Start. Let's pull up the thing. Okay. Everybody can see it down there in the chat room in the Canoma. All right. The Shining, an esoteric analysis dedicated to Stanley Kubrick by David Block. So
good.
All right.
Yeah. I break down the analysis in 3 main parts, and it's because they are quite long in and of themselves. I hope we will manage to get through part 1 and 2. And maybe we do part 3 later on in the second part. In part 1, I introduce my work and also go into a little bit of the detail. But in part 2, it will take up pace, and I will start to show you details. And in part 3, even more details. So as I said, bear with me, and I promise you to show what The Shining is all about. All right.
Next slide.
Next slide.
Let's do it.
So this is part 1 of 3. I hope we get through part 1 and 2 today.
All right.
Yes. So this is the introduction of my work. And I will tell you a little bit where it started. It started on a university for real. It took up pace on a university in Sweden. We can go to the next slide. I had already started to work with The Shining or try to decode it before, but I had a master course in media in Sweden, and we were supposed to do an installment, an interactive installment, and present the installment as it was a real case for the class and try to make it as real as possible. And I chose to do a Kubrick installment on the Kubrick exhibition. And my idea was that you should play Danny on his bike and go around in the hotel and try to decode the Shining, the meaning behind The Shining. Because I think that the best way to make people understand is to get them involved. So I had many different ideas why I wanted to do it. I didn't just want to do it for the master degree. I wanted to do it for Kubrick's sake, and also because I think Kubrick had something to say, who is important. So I had many different layers of ideas behind this project, not just the master course. And of course, this is not an academic work per se, because it had become much more than that. So this is not the academic work, but that's where they started there for real, you can say. Yeah. Next slide.
Awesome. Yeah, for those who will be listening in audio after this, we are describing everything so you won't be missing too much. So yeah, again, next slide, interactive game with Danny as the main character.
Yeah. So my idea was to have this graphic and all the feeling of the hotel, and you were going very fast with the bicycle and Danny and pick up clues and piece them together, and also at the same time interact with different stuff on the material stuff in the exhibition. So you get these keys and you get this puzzle in material form in the installment as well. When as well you played the game and you interacted with the objects for real on the spot on the exhibition.
Awesome. I'm surprised somebody hasn't created one already, like a real video game, but
yeah,
they should.
Yeah. Exactly. It would be a great game, I think.
It would be awesome.
Yes.
Pretty scary. Now in the next slide, we've got a movie that I love. Yeah, Room 237.
Yeah, and I want to mention this documentary as well. They did a documentary named Room 237, and I think all of you know about it already. Different ideas what the movie was about, and I have watched it as well, and I liked it, but I felt something was off. I didn't buy into good information, but I didn't think they had put it together. I felt something was off. I felt they touched on something, but they didn't really crack the code. And it made me more curious, of course. That's how I am as a person. If I see something and I don't agree, I don't become angry or stop. I just get more enthusiastic and I want to know more. Why don't I agree? What's off? Yeah. And
that's by Rodney Asher. He's been a past guest, and but he does good documentaries.
Yeah, the movie is good, and it's a very good introduction to The Shining. So watch it if you haven't seen it.
All right.
Yeah. So we come to the number 42 in part 2 here, and I will explain the number 42. I think many maybe know about the number 42 from the movie A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and of course the book. But what does it mean? People doesn't know why 42, and it's like the audience in the movie. What 42? What the fuck?
The answer to the universe.
Yeah.
We're just asking the wrong question.
Exactly. Now we explain the number 42 in esoteric lore here. Of course, they had more meaning than one, but for this movie, and the number 42 is very important. And you have this quote from a lady. I don't remember where I find it, but the business with the number 42, maybe it has nothing to do with the Holocaust, but then why the shirt? Why that movie on the TV? And 2 times 3 times 7 does equal 42. Yeah, and the number 42 is very important in the movie The Shining. And I will explain it now. The movie The Shining had premiere in USA May 23rd, 1980. That's very peculiar because it's exactly 42 years from now on, from 1980. It's just a couple of days. So maybe we can do part 3 on May the 23rd and finish the analysis exactly 42 years later. I just want to mention it.
All right.
Yeah. So in the documentary Room 237, you have different theories what the movie is about, and I want to mention one of them here, and it's through Jeffrey Cox, a history professor, and he is into this Holocaust and Hitler and all that theory. And the reason why I mention him is he says some good things, and I have it highlighted in red here. I'm not going to go through everything he's writing, but Jeffrey Cox mentioned that the number 42 is on Danny's sweatshirt, and the typewriter is from 1942. And it says, Cox says, Danny had no idea about the word, and now he knows. He's no longer dope about things. Through the movie, Danny transformed into a more enlightened person. And that's a very good analysis of Jeffrey Cox, even though he doesn't understand that the number 42 is about transformation, because Jeffrey Cox is not an esoteric person, so he doesn't connect the number 42, but that's a very true statement. And I like when people do good statements without knowing the esoteric background, because then I can fill in what they say with more proof. And that is what I'm going to do. And he mentioned a very important thing, and it's a color that he associates with ghosts, but also with power and with murder and with death. And he's talking about blue, the color blue. Kubrick uses color a lot. And when Kubrick highlights things in blue, Cox says it's a color that he associates with ghosts, but also with power and with murder and with death. And that's a very important quote from Cox. And I will go mention it again later on, but I just mention it now. All right, we go forward.
Yeah, interesting. For the audience, according to Cox, the film is an allegory about coming to terms with Hitler's extermination camps. So, interesting theory.
Yeah, and it is in the movie, but it's not the main theme.
Right.
But he's touching on something.
Yeah, it makes sense. And Danny is sort of the eyes of the world. He sees the horror and everything. His waking up, as you said. All right, next slide says the typewriter and Leon Vitali.
Yeah, and also one of these details I like. When I see details like this, I get very concentrated and try to understand why. The typewriter and Leon Vitali. Leon Vitali says that all the typewriter in 1942, for example, belonged to Kubrick himself, and that particular model was once a commonplace as late model iPhones. Kubrick longtime assistant Leon Vitali. And why that's important is that I think what Kubrick tried to say here is that Kubrick's typewriter, Kubrick writes through Jack. And he is writing about number 42. And Danny is number 42. And I'm coming back to that, why, soon.
All right, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy.
Yeah, the famous line there.
Right.
And that's, I will come back to that as well very soon.
All right, next slide.
Yeah. The story is about number 42. And Danny is number 42. And part of him, Jack, because Jack is his father. Danny goes from being a 0 to the number 42 in the movie The Shining. And the transformation goes through Jack. He has to transform to survive Jack in the movie. Jack is 24, and I will come back to that later. Danny is 42. That is that is a palindromic number. It's a number that remains the same when its digits are reversed. So all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, equals all play and no work makes Danny a dull boy. Without work, Danny will not become number 42. It takes effort and transform the spirit. It takes effort to transform the spirit. Now we come back to Cox's quote. Danny had no idea about the word, and now he knows. He's no longer dope about things. I will go back to this number 24 and 42 again, more in part The Hotel and Danny, and July the 4th, 1921.
All right.
So now we come to the different themes in the movie, because it's not about one thing, but the movie has one main theme. But you have these side stories. They are all connected. So they are there for a reason. Kubrick didn't do anything without a reason. Nothing is in the movie as a coincidence. It's there for a reason. And the next slide, we have the moon landing the theory about the moon landing. And that's an intriguing idea, but I don't really agree with Widener's statement that Kubrick faked the moon landing. And I think he missed the point a little bit here. Doesn't mean that I don't like Widener, or he has done a lot of good things, and you should listen to Widener. And I have listened to Widener. But just in this case, I think he's off a little bit. I will show you why. But it is there. It is there.
And as you say, the mass murder of the Indians, the Native Americans, it's in the narrative, but it's not the main theme either.
Yeah. It is there, but it's not the main theme. And Kubrick had many different themes in the movie, all connected. Yeah, so the mass murder of Indians is not the main theme. I think we have gone through that. Some connection I have made is the Indians were shamans, for example. They had contacted nature spirits and lived in harmony with Mother Earth. Those responsible for the mass murder lived in cities, the modern society, and had contacted completely different spirits. The common denominator was their interest in the metaphysical and in spirits. So they both practiced esoteric methods and theories, but had very different ideas and contacted different kinds of spirit, nature spirit versus the fallen angels or the watchers. But you have a conflict there.
And that picture of Jack and the cans, what that you circled, what's in the cans?
Yeah, I think he tried to point out the conflict here between those opposing esoteric ideas. And some of it also, if you take the esoteric practicing for the watchers and so on, it's very can be if you use it wrong, you go to transhumanism and technology. And technology is very anti-nature and the natural habitat Indians. Nature-based esoteric practices versus transhumanism technology. So I think he tried to deepen that conflict. Yeah.
Next slide.
Hotel and Danny. Next slide.
Let's get into the Hotel and Danny.
Yeah. Now, many have pointed out that the hotel is illogical. It doesn't the room doesn't fit, and the hotel is a metaphysical maze. It is as physical as it is mental. So it is not only a material construct, a physical object. It is also a mental construct. So it's also in Danny's head and also Jack's head. But as an esoteric person, what is real? We call the material word asaya, for example, in Kabbalah.
Mm-hmm.
And I use asaya a lot because it distances yourself from this idea that the material world is the real and the metaphysical is unreal. If you use the terms for it, you program your head to think differently. So we are calling this material world asaya, the world of illusion. So the hotel is as physical as it is metaphysical. That's the reason why it's not logical.
All right.
Yeah, so what do we find in this hotel? I will go through some important main scenes in the movie. You have one scene where he and his mother is watching a movie, Summer of 42, and the TV have no cord. And many have pointed out why Summer of 42 and why no cord to the television. And you see this metaphysical, Kubrick are trying to tell you the hotel is not only physical, it's also metaphysical. Something is off here. And why this movie Summer of 42? Now the number 42 comes up again. Why are they watching the Summer of 42? And I want to point out some important things about the movie Summer of 42. Next slide. We have the mother and the child. And in the movie, Wendy seems to love Danny. But she's also very disconnected. Wendy have cognitive dissonance. And her cognitive dissonance is greater than her love for Danny, I would say. Yes, the next slide. In the movie Summer of 42, you have a character named Dorothy. And in the end of the movie, I will read a quote from, not from the movie, but one who writes about the movie. Dora has fled the Iceland, and in the night, and an envelope is in the front door with Hermie's name on it. Inside is a note from Dorothy. She assures Hermie she will never forget him. Her note closes with the hope that Hermie may be spared the senseless tragedies of life. Now we have the name Dorothy. I think Kubrick wanted us to connect the name Dorothy with the Wizard of Oz. And I can't go into any details, but I will try to explain it as fast as I can. In the movie The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy is the fool. And in Tarot, the fool card has the number 0 and also 22. And it has also number 42 encoded in the fool card. The fool carries a bag behind his behind his shoulder.
Right.
And in that bag, he had all the rest of the major arcana cards with him. Because the major arcana is supposed to transform you into something new. And you have all the cards you need to transform. You carry them with you when you have become the fool. Because when you are the fool, you have started to understand that you have been fooled. Then you can start to unravel and start to understand yourself and the world around you through the major arcana and through the tarot cards. So the fool carries all the card with him or her. The fool have the potentiality to transform because he knows or she knows she is the fool. But before that, you cannot transform.
Mm-hmm.
That's the beginning of it. So you have all the cards you need to become something new. And this is the journey Danny is going through in the movie. And in the movie The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy is going through that. But I'm not going to talk about The Wizard of Oz, but it is difference between the book and the movie. And I have decoded the movie. So if you want me to do it, I can do it some other time, but it is a very interesting movie and a very interesting book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, next slide. So you have Dory the Fool, the Wizard of Oz, and you see her carry her bag and the dog, same as the Fool, the dog and the bag over his shoulder. Yeah, next slide. So the story is about number 42, Jack and Danny. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. Danny is 42. Danny is 42, the fool. And you can see he has the number 42 on his shirt. And you can see the number also on the typewriter. Jack is typing on. And you can see Doopy in the door from Disney's Seven Dwarfs.
Mm.
And he's standing in a bathroom. And someone has pointed out that Doopy is disappearing from the door later on in the movie. That's not a coincidence because Danny starts to transform to go from being the dupe or the zero, the fool, to become something new because he has to. And it is through the obstacles or the problems we have or our downfalls or and failures that make us transform. That we need this this trial to become something new. Yeah, next slide. So Danny the Fool equals 42. In the tarot, the major arcana, you have the card 13, 14, and 15. It is the Death card, the Art card, and the Devil card. And if you add them together, you get 42. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that he is only those cards. He's all the major arcana, but those 3 cards is the most important cards. You have to die. Your old self has to die. And through art and craft making, you have to transform and become something new. And then you have to defeat the devil within and without. In this case. And the devil is in yourself. The dark side of yourself. You have to transform. But in this movie, you have Jack also as the devil. So he has to defeat the devil within himself and also without. But when we are using esoteric method, we are mostly talking about the devil inside us, the ego. We have to transform our ego to something new. So Danny's old self has to die in order to create something new, the death card. The card 14, an art. Danny have to create a new self with art, craft making, transformation with the spirit. And the devil card, Danny have to defeat the devil within and without, and that's Jack, his own father, in this case. And I have had a lecture about this tarot card and the secret behind the tarot card. I cannot go into that now, but I can explain more in detail if anyone wants to about the tarot and why 13, 14, 15 ends up in one row. There are a method to that, where you place the card in a certain way. But this is the main card Danny have to transform himself through or work his way through. And you probably know in Freemason, you have these death rituals, you have the skulls, and skull and bones, you have the skull.
Right.
Many of them go through a ritual where you play your own death. And that's the death card in the tarot. Your old self has to die in order for something new to come to surface. So this is nothing new in esoteric method or theory. Yeah, next slide then. So you have this room 237, and it has more than one meaning. You have, of course, 2 plus 3 plus 7 equals 12. And 12 is a very important number. You have the zodiac. But 2 times 3 times 7 equals 42. And we already explained that the 42 is Danny. So this is a fool's journey. When he enter room 237, he start his fool's journey, or the fool's journey. It is when Danny start his journey to become number 42.
Fascinating. All right. Very fascinating. All right.
And we have the maze. And many speculate about this maze. And in the movie, Kubrick, in his narrative, explained that it's an Indian burial ground. But it's also a mental maze, because the hotel is as mental as it is physical. And I think Kubrick tried to say many things about this. One thing is, you can't tell people the truth. I think many have tried to tell people the truth. You can only show them the maze. And that was one of my main goals with the interactive game, to allow the player to play it and try to solve it themselves. And I think that was one of Kubrick's main goals with his movie. You cannot tell straight up to people. You have to engage them and make them curious about the narrative of the movie, and then they try to solve it themselves. Then you get the viewer engaged into solve the narrative, and that's the best we can do as a filmmakers, or if you write books. And I think that was one main reason. But also, it's very important to mention, in the movie, they are telling us that it's an Indian burial ground. And we all talked about ghosts and the Professor Cox.
For the audience, there's a picture of Jack standing over the labyrinth, like some demiurge. All right, next slide.
Yeah.
So gold room.
And then we have the gold room, and the gold room is very important. The gold room is a very important narrative, and in the movie, gold is associated with the sun in esoteric lore. So gold is associated with the sun. So the gold room is also the sun room. And the main, the most important thing here is to understand it's the sun room. And I will come to that soon. So you have the moon room and you have the sun room. And in the gold room or the sun room goes the elite from hell, the shadow side of humanity. More on July the 4th, 1921. I will come back to this gold room. It's very, very important in the movie. And if you miss it, and I will tell you what the date is all about. What he means with the sun room. Mm-hmm. And the elite in the gold or sun room.
Yes.
And now we come to a very important detail. People
Descent
have
into
out.
hell in the future. Okay, they should be right.
Yeah. Descent into hell in the future. And we come to Jung, Carl Gustav Jung. And Carl Gustav Jung was a very important person for Kubrick. His first movie was named Shadow of Fear. And he was very fascinating with Carl Gustav Jung. And Carl Gustav Jung is, of course, very famous for his archetypes. And the archetype, they are underlying base forms or the archetype as such from which emerge images and motifs such as the mother, the child, the trickster, and the flood, among others. And we have, of course, the shadow is a very, very famous saying of Jung, the shadow self, the anima, the animus, and the self. These are a result of collective, shared ancestral memories that may persist in art, literature, and religion, but aren't obvious to the eye. These recurring themes help us understand the Jungian archetypes. We have stories we are retelling through history about heroes and evil, and it seems to be very stuck in the mentality of the human race. They always come back to these stories for a reason, according to Jung. And it's important to mention here that the mother, the child, and the trickster and the flood is among others is among these archetypes. And all of these are in the movie, The Shining. So you can see Kubrick's influence of Jung had a huge impact on Kubrick. And already, it's very important to mention, already in his first movie, The Shadow of Fear. And the reason why that's important is to show that Kubrick didn't let go of Jung. It was something he was very interested in. And Carl Gustav Jung was interested in esoteric lore, like alchemy, the Gnostic, the Nag Hammadiya library. And I think Kubrick became interested in esoteric matters through Jung. That's the reason why I think it's important to mention that he's already, as his first movie, he became interested in Jung and I think esoteric matters, practices, and esoteric theories. So I think he was very well versed in esoteric literature and theory and practices. And I see it in many of his movies, not only The Shining. You have it in Space Odyssey 2001, for example. So it's no coincidence. That's what I try to say. He knew a lot about esoteric practices. Yeah. Jung described the animus as the unconscious masculine side of a woman and the anima as the unconscious feminine side of a man, each transcending the personal psyche. He believed they are the abstract symbol sets that formulate the archetype of the self. So we have this unconscious side of ourself and the shadow side in our psyche we are not conscious about. It's quite much Freud in this as well, and Jung studied under Freud, so it's no coincidence. Yeah, so we have, next slide. So we have 3 important archetypes for Jung, and we find them also in the movie. You have the mother, the child, the flood. And of course, the mother, the child is no. Many movies have a mother and a child in it, but in this case, you also have the flood. So you have 3 parts.
Not many movies have an elevator full of blood.
Exactly, and I will point to more details so I can strengthen my theory here.
Right.
Yeah, so you have the first movie of Kubrick, Shadow of Fear, and it's a lot about the river. And you have water. And water is a very important element in esoteric practices and theory. Water is also a symbol of the unconscious and the metaphysical. And this is a point many people are missing. In the Old Testament, for example, they think Noah traveled through water. No, he traveled through metaphysical space. You will not find the ark. There are no ark. But it's hard for people to think in metaphysical terms. They have to train themselves and understand the symbols. So the water is a symbol for the unconscious and the metaphysical as well. What is lying beneath the surface, so to speak. And you have the Sigmund Freud idea of the iceberg was under the water and was above the water and all that.
Right.
But this is Kubrick's first movie. So already in a very early age, he was interested in these themes and these theories. And that's very important to mention. As I said, his extensive knowledge in the esoteric lore can be explained through his early interest in Jung. So in the movie Shadow of Fear, you have a couple of soldiers who confront the inner darkness, and one goes mad. And in one scene, you see one of the soldiers going in the river, and it seems totally lost. And they confront the darkness in himself. The movie ain't that good, but you should see it anyway, because it start Kubrick's career and his interest, I think, in Jung and the esoteric. Yeah, next slide. So now we come into the detail, because as some people have pointed out, on the table in one of the scenes where Jack is talking about the hotel, you see the red book on the table, And you have this room 237. So I was curious because I bought the red book, the big version.
That's a big one.
It's a big one.
Yeah.
So I think what's on the page 237. I had to look into it, and I find a heading on page 237 called "Descent into Hell in the Future." You can look it up yourself. It's on page 237 in the Red Book, Carl Jung's The Red Book. Same number as the room, 237. Yeah, next slide. So under the heading Descent into Hell in the Future, and I quote, "1,000 serpent crowd around, wailing the sun. Deep night falls. A red stream of blood, thick red blood springs up, surging for a long time, then ebbing. I am seized by fear. What did I see?" So you have here a red stream of blood. Danny, what did I see? You have one clip, one fast clip of Danny when he imagined this. He sees it inside himself, in his inner eye. And he's like scared. What did I see? And you have, of course, room 237 and page 237. And a footnote from Jung. And the footnote is very long, so I try to make it dense or shorten it. But it says, "I was in great confusion as to the meaning of all those things I had seen. The beetle, of course, I knew to be an ancient sun symbol, and the setting sun. The secret murder of the hero I could not understand at all. I could not then realize that it was also archetypal. And this red book is in one scene in The Shining. And Kubrick was famous. He didn't do anything. Everything was there for a purpose. So I think he wants us to think about archetypes, and I think he strengthened it with this page in the book, where you see that the heading is Descent into Hell in the Future. Yeah, that was part one, and now we will come to the details of this. And